Senior Stayorgo show today. We have Jacquie Schwoerke, who is the Vice President of Global Patient Services for Sharp Healthcare here in San Diego. Jacquie leads the business development activities of global healthcare relationships, primarily assisting with emergency evacuations of U.S. citizens and foreign travelers and expats actually that live in Baja California, Mexico, to Sharp Care providers. So it's going to be a really interesting show because if you are a traveler, especially an international traveler, there may be some things you'll learn today. So
Jacquie, thank you for being here. And before we get to our first question, we have the field of life, and we have players on the field of life that really help to support and advocate on behalf of seniors. And we're going to add you, we're recruiting you in September as we get towards baseball playoffs. I'm going to put you on the field of life as a new player to get us through the playoffs and into the World Series in 2019. So welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
So we're very excited to have you on the board. First question is in terms of how you deal with domestic health insurance when you're traveling abroad. Does it cover you, and what should somebody be looking for?
Well, most of the time people assume, unfortunately, that their health care will cover them. Their health care in the U.S. will cover them when they're traveling internationally. It is important that you make that phone call to your health insurance plan and ask that specific question. Will you cover me outside of the United States? Traditional Medicare, for example, does not cover you outside of the United States but there are a few exceptions, such as U.S. territories, or you might be within so many miles off the shores of the U.S. on a cruise ship. But for the most part, domestic insurance does not cover you internationally. Now, there are managed care plans, such as Kaiser or Medicare Advantage, that might cover for medical expenses, but you do have to pay for those out of your pocket first and then get reimbursed.
So if you're on a cruise ship?
If you're on a cruise ship, if you have a domestic plan, it might cover you within so many miles of the U.S. border. But for example, if you're down in the Caribbean, it's not going to cover you.
Okay, gotcha.
So might is the key word.
Yeah.
Might.
You need to ask, you need to call, ask certain questions. Do you cover me outside of the United States? If they say yes, then get it in writing and get specifically how much they cover you, what will it cover, what kind of medical evacuation it is, what number to call in the moment that you need a medical evacuation, so that you have all that pertinent information prior to leaving on your trip rather than waiting until you're in the crisis.
Would that actually be within the contract that you get at the beginning of the year, or would you actually see it?
It's really in the fine print. It's something that you have to ask. If you call customer service, you're probably not going to get that answer right away. They're going to say, let me check.
Right.
So you definitely need to push a little harder to get the information, again, in writing.
In writing.
In writing.
Key. So should I purchase a travel policy? Should I always purchase a travel policy when traveling outside the U.S.?
Well, I think it's a personal preference. Travel policies are no different than homeowners insurance, whether you have earthquake, flood, car insurance, personal liability risk for people working at your house. So it is a policy not to be confused with health insurance. Most people consider when you're buying a travel policy that it is for trip cancellation, lost luggage, ticket reimbursement, that kind of thing. But they also have components that you can individualize to whatever you need for medical coverage, for medical evacuation. So medical coverage would mean that if you were traveling let's say to Africa. Healthcare is limited in certain parts of Africa, so you would want to have a plan that would maybe cover about $100,000 in medical expenses and probably $500,000 in an evacuation to get you maybe to Europe on an air ambulance if that's what you needed, to a higher level of care. Most plans that cover you, it's usually around $25,000. If you tick the little box on the airline ticket when you're purchasing it, do you want to buy travel policy? It's $40. It's $10,000. That won't get you very far.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, would you recommend that? I mean,
I do recommend people consider purchasing a travel policy. Again, it's a lottery ticket you hope you don't win, actually.
Right.
Because when you're traveling internationally and you do have a medical emergency, whether it be an accident or maybe recently with what happened in the Bahamas, you could have been injured in the hurricane. If anything like that happened, you have to pay for all of that evacuation and medical expenses. And that can be financially devastating to people first and foremost while they're still going through this medical crisis.
Wow.
So in your experience, do they pay? I mean, again, it's always insurance and...
Okay, so yes, travel policies will pay. You have to be careful with whatever you're buying. Pre-existing conditions, you need to get a pre-existing waiver. Now, if you purchase it within a certain period of time, you can get a pre-existing waiver without any extra fee. But sometimes people wait till the last minute and try and purchase it like a week before they're leaving. Oh, I forgot, So they'll purchase it, and then the pre-existing, they won't allow that to be added to the policy. And people don't realize that hypertension is considered a pre-existing condition to a heart attack.
So how far before you're going to travel do you suggest purchasing the policy?
You should
especially if you have a pre-existing condition.
You should buy it within the week or within a short window of time. Most travel policies that allow you to have a pre-existing condition added to it only allow you within a week of purchasing the price.
Okay.
And you don't have to buy the trip cancellation, the baggage lost, all that. You can buy just a policy that is strictly for medical or medical evacuation. There's a company called Insure My Trip. You can go to insuremytrip.com. They are like they're a broker, but they're more like Switzerland. They have everybody that sells travel policies, and
is this
you can
an
go.
assistance Is this the assistance company?
No, this is just strictly a broker for purchasing travel policies. So you can go online and you can do price comparison. So you pick and choose what kind of coverage you want to add to your policy, and then you can price compare. And then that's a better way of making sure that you're getting the right product for you.
So you actually get some paperwork to take with you to...
You get paperwork, you get a copy of the policy, the important thing is that travel insurance, now I'm going to refer to it as travel insurance, but travel policy such as, USAA, that's who I have for my personal insurance, but they outsource to a company for case management. So if you got sick, that's why you want to ask what's the phone number. If you got sick, you're not going to call, Medicare. You're not going to call United Healthcare. You're going to call the assistance company and let them know that you're ill and you're in a hospital and what's the next step. And then they open a case. And then they actually start to manage the case. The payer is the travel policy. The payer then you submit a claim. And most policies are pay and submit for reimbursement. Sometimes you can get a letter of guarantee. But more importantly, you need to follow the rules of whatever the policy is. You can't go outside of those.
So usually you're paying first and then being reimbursed later.
Usually.
Okay.
So it's an out-of-pocket.
It is.
And then hope for the best.
Yes, there are policies that will, but there, in certain situations, there are times where they will actually do a letter of guarantee to the hospital. You just need to know the right people to call and push and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. So what is the average cost of
a travel policy?
So there's the travel policy, but then there's the pre-existing condition, and then, so it sounds like there's a policy, but then there's all these little pieces that could be added on.
Right. So the average cost of just buying a medical evacuation and a medical insurance component, all the rest of it you didn't want to purchase, is about $400, $500, depending on your age for the trip and how long you're going to be gone.
Okay.
And where you're going. The underwriters for the policies determine that.
Does it vary by country,
It can. Yes. So if you're going to, a more remote area, such as like you're planning to travel and do some hiking and stuff, it's a little bit more risky to get you evacuated out, so they're going to add a little bit more, knowing that that's a risk. So underwriters figure that out. I don't know how they do it, and then back to your other question, if you buy the whole thing, let's just say you want to buy trip cancellation, all that stuff, it's based on the cost of your trip. So let's say your cost was $2,000. It's going to be about 8%, so $400.
Okay.
This is fascinating because it's like I'm learning. I didn't know. I mean, this is all that is out there. Because you always look at those things and you go, it's like when you rent a car and they ask you this. Do you want this? Do you want? No, I don't want any of that
Right.
stuff. But this, I mean, because you think your car insurance covers you in the rental car. So, but you're saying your health insurance is not going to cover you. I mean, that's the basic premise. Don't think your health insurance is going to Don't assume your health insurance is going to cover you while you're, following the elephants of Africa or something
Correct.
like that.
And if they do cover, make sure you understand what that coverage is and how long, who to call, how long it's going to take to get evacuated. Most evacuations are only to the nearest medical center that can assist you, so it's to a higher level of care. Not always. People think they're going to get transferred back to the U.S.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily
You're going to New York.
the case.
No, you're not going to New
for
York.
example, if you're in Vietnam, you're going to get transferred to Bangkok.
Really?
If you're in parts of Africa, you'll probably get transferred to Germany. It just depends.
Have a good trip.
So I also saw or heard recently a program called STEP. Can you explain what that is?
Yes. So STEP is the Safe Traveler Enrollment Program through the State Department of the U.S. government. It's an amazing program, actually. It's really easy. You enroll online, but you enter all of your travel information, your passport information, so that if your passport were stolen or lost, you could immediately contact the U.S. government and they would be able to help replace that in a pretty quick way. Also, recently, again, with the hurricane in Bahamas, that gives them a chance to know how many Americans are in a certain disaster area, or if there was unfortunate other events in the world that are happening. And then they would be able to help figure out and contact your family, help with the evacuation. The government helps to step in when they're in those natural disasters. And
that's called again?
STEP, S-T-E-P.
And stands
Safe
for?
Traveler Enrollment Program. And you go to step.gov and you'll be able to enroll.
So if it's that good, which it sounds like it is, I've done a good amount of traveling. I wouldn't say tons, but a good amount, and never heard of it. Why aren't travel agencies, all these companies saying, have you enrolled in the STEP program?
Exactly. Well, I'd love for you to come to our workshop on October 12th because we will have a representative from the U.S. consulate there to talk about the benefits of the STEP program and also what the U.S. government can and cannot do for you when you are traveling internationally. A lot of people have called and asked the government, I'm in a hospital and I can't pay my bill. Well, the government may help you pay that bill, but it's not for free. So,
Okay, so you mentioned a workshop.
Yes.
Let everybody know where and who and how.
So we had a workshop just in June and we were filled to capacity, so we found a bigger location. We're going to be at the Sheraton Four Points in the Kearney Mesa area on October 12th from 9 to noon. We will have representatives from the U.S. consulate, like I said, to talk about their program, representatives from Insure My Trip to explain the different kinds of travel policies and the benefits of purchasing certain policies. We're also going to talk about students traveling and studying abroad. A lot of grandparents are helping to support education these days. And we want the students to also, or the parents and grandparents, to understand that the schools may offer a policy when traveling internationally to study, but it's a very limited policy. And so we want to educate on that. We'll have a doctor to also talk about the importance of getting your vaccinations or studying what you need to take on a trip, how to have an emergency kit, and also what's important is your prescriptions. Make sure that you carry them in their original containers. Certain countries in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East, you don't want to be having them in just a pill box. So.
Oh.
Wow, a lot to.
How about a baggie with the label?
That won't work. Nice try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the pharmacies need smaller bottles.
Well, you know, and I'm actually, it's funny that you say that. I actually went to a pharmacy because most people do mail order now.
Right.
And it comes in these giant bottles. You get 3 months supply. So I've actually been talking to a couple of the pharmacies that we work with near our hospital and seeing if we can find smaller bottles with the exact label so that you should carry all of your medical records. Take that back. You should carry important summary of your medical history with you along with all of your medications and what you take them for and everything.
So is traveling alone just a super high risk? I mean,
no, just make sure you pack your common sense.
well, okay, millennials, sorry.
No, but I mean, you know, I'm actually giving a talk in the end of October to a group of women that like to travel internationally, and it's specifically geared towards some of the things that they need to think about when they're traveling either alone or as a group of women. You know, it's just, again, mainly paying attention and doing things that you normally would do, whether you're with a large group or just at home.
Like, don't be roaming the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Don't roam the streets 3 o'clock in the morning. Pay attention to what's going into your drinks. Don't give your credit card away for people to just walk off and say, "I'll be right back." You know, when you're in a foreign country, you have to
Same
you have
thing
to pay
here,
attention.
I mean.
It's no
You're
different.
not supposed to just
Yeah.
give your credit card away.
Yeah.
So this event in October that's sponsored by Sharp.
Healthcare, yes.
Okay, and where could people go? Is it free? Is it?
Oh, it is free, and it's open to anybody, regardless of what your health plan is or whether you're affiliated with Sharp. We really want to do our best to just educate people as much as possible on how to prepare for traveling abroad. You go to sharp.com, or you can call 1-800-82-SHARP to register, and we'll be more than happy to get you into the class. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of information. We also help you prepare what kind of documents you should have when you're traveling. You should always carry a copy of your passport, for example. You want to make sure that if you do get hospitalized anywhere, that you only give the copy of the passport and not your actual passport. There are different situations where people can be not released from a hospital because their passport is being held and they're waiting to get the bill paid. Everything is pay up front in foreign hospitals, unlike here in the United States. Again, people go and they think they're going to have the same experience when they go to a medical facility in a foreign country, and it's not. And there are many places that are very, very amazing. You know, I mean, you're great in Germany and you're great in France, but you're going to be asked to pay for your bill, and so it's.
So before your role, I'm just trying to define. I mean, I know Patty introduced you. What is your role in this overarching? I mean, this is totally new and fascinating to me.
Well, I didn't even know that this side of healthcare existed till I got into this department about 9 years ago. So Sharp has had a department for almost 40 years of helping people who get sick or injured while traveling internationally. Our role is to help with those evacuations when they need to come to the nearest U.S. hospital. And we're a border town, so we do get a lot of evacuations out of Mexico. We have strong working relationships with the cruise lines throughout all of the Mexican Riviera. We collaborate with hospitals around the world. We also collaborate with the hospitals in Florida, where a lot of our San Diegans like to travel the Caribbean, then end up in a hospital in Florida, and so we help to bring them back to San Diego for their continuity of care as well.
Well, you're in a growth industry, given the baby boomers that are going to be retiring
And traveling.
And this is really a message that needs to be yelled.
Thank you. Well, I want people to travel smart. You know, everybody's planning the fun part of the trip, and
Right.
you get the itinerary. But if you need to have an emergency evacuation plan, and you need to understand what that's going to require. And then before you leave home, you need to share that with a loved one.
That's a great point.
Share that with a friend, and make sure that in the event that you are in a hospital and unable to really communicate for yourself, you've got an advocate at home. Remember, when you're traveling, there's 9 hours, 10 hours difference. So when you're trying to communicate from Europe or the Southeast Asia, that time difference, you're not able to find somebody in the U.S. during the time that you need them. So, I mean, the Philippines, for example, it's 17 hours difference.
Wow.
And everybody's traveling.
Everybody's traveling. And again, the other important thing is if you are a frequent traveler, get your global entry.
Okay, what is that?
Global entry
It's
is
like your TSA, you know.
Yeah.
Would this be even true to Canada? Or
Sure.
Okay.
But my understanding is global entry doesn't always work.
What do you mean global entry doesn't work?
When you get to the machine and it's the facial recognition, and I've had friends where it didn't really work and they had to go through the line anyway. And
global entry is a little bit different. You actually apply through the State Department.
Right.
It's a 5-year,
right,
and they give you an ID card, but they do a background check on you.
right.
When not all U.S. airports, not all U.S. airports have global entry available, but for the most part, most of them do. And it's really a scanning of your fingers. They're not doing facial recognition. That's a special program some of the airlines
That's in
have.
LA.
Yeah. So it's usually your fingerprints, and then you get a ticket, and then you can walk through. Depending on what time you arrive to the airport, such as our San Diego airport, global entry doesn't work in the morning if it's at 5:30 and you're trying to get through to catch an early flight. So you do have to go through the traditional line. Yeah.
Well,
but it is nice because you don't have to take off your shoes. You
Right.
don't have to,
Right.
unload everything out
Or
of
if you have gray hair and you're in South America, they go, "Oh, you go in the old people line.
Yeah.
It goes quicker."
Oh,
Yes.
like I said, every country is different.
That was
Just know-
very interesting. Oh, you go in the old people line. Okay.
Well, then you're already prepared for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That you're going to
It was
in February.
perfect.
What did they say to Dave?
He just followed. He has no hair, so he just
I
followed.
was going to say, is no hair or gray hair? Is that kind of the bottom?
He just followed and it was okay.
Well, did you get your questions answered? Because you're about to embark
Yeah,
on
pretty
your...
much. Pretty much I did.
Okay.
Pretty much I
Any
did.
other...
So you had a question earlier today that we talked a little bit about.
Okay, well, just real quick, because we're getting... just in terms of Medicare, that's not for seniors, because, we're kind of directing towards seniors.
Correct.
They should not expect anything different than what we've talked about.
Traditional Medicare versus Medicare Advantage, totally different benefits.
What about their supplemental
So there are
plans?
supplementals to traditional Medicare. You need to have your supplemental plan needs to be a Plan F. I forget all the other alphabets. There's like a Plan M and N and whatever. But Plan F, for example, is a supplement that you can get for your Medicare through AARP, through United Healthcare. The last time I looked, it only covered up to a lifetime benefit of $50,000, though.
Okay.
So that could easily be spent
Quick.
Yes.
Because
So
you were
but that's-
talking 100,000 earlier.
Yes.
But this Plan F is for foreign, has to do with...
Yeah, it has a benefit
for foreign.
for foreign
A limited benefit.
Yes, a limited
Okay,
benefit
okay.
to cover foreign travel.
Okay.
But again, remember when you're traveling, then, and the reason why I also encourage a travel policy is, what if you got sick and you stayed in the country that you're in, because that's the best place for you to be, and now your family has to pay for a hotel, they have to pay for changing of the airline tickets, all of these other expenses get incurred, meals. So that's why I encourage people, you don't want to be financially devastated. An air ambulance evacuation just out of Cabo San Lucas is $22,000.
Wow.
An
Adds up quick.
An air ambulance out of Lima, Peru. I had a young girl 3 years ago, $152,000.
Wow.
Now she had a travel policy. The travel policy contacted the assistance company. The assistance company arranged for the air ambulance, and the air ambulance was paid for through that policy. She didn't have to come up with that money. But imagine
Wow.
where you are if you don't have.
And Peru is a major hub nowadays for all the
Yes,
tourists.
but it is, and you should know that if you are in a hospital in Peru, that you would have to go or have somebody go down to a pharmacy and purchase your medications that you need for the hospital. You would have to bring linens from the hotel. Food is not provided. Everybody assumes that they get this wonderful,
Experience.
hotel experience, but it's not the case. I mean, I was in Guadalajara last week, and the patients at the hospital that I was visiting, the family was bringing the food from home and staying overnight, sleeping under the bed to help take care of the family member.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So don't assume that you're going to have the same healthcare experience, especially if you're in some remote areas.
Well, we're going to end it on that storyline. So if everybody's hesitant and they're traveling, that story, $122,000 to fly out of
152.
152 to fly out of Lima, Peru, or whatever. It's worth it. Jackie, you have totally opened my eyes to something I knew very little about, and I thank you so much for coming on the show today, Patty. And you
Yes.
and Dave are going to take a little bit more precautions when you go
got that
traveling
right.
to Don't Cry for Me, Argentina next year.
Especially with pre-existing conditions.
So we thank you for watching. Please share this. Please, if you're in San Diego and you're anywhere near the Four Points Hotel.
4 Points Hotel.
4 Points Hotel. Please get online and sign up. I think it's well worth your time and energy to go if you're thinking of traveling a lot. So this is Ron and Patty with Senior Stay or Go. We thank you for tuning in, and please share this information as much as you can. Have a great September, and we'll see you in October.